What are you waiting for? See virginmobile.ie. Virgin Mobile. Nothing hidden.
SIM-only contract. For T's and C's and acceptable usage policy, see virginmobile.ie. €25 a month after offer. Ends 28th of July 2021.
It's great to get outdoors again and meet up safely with friends and family. But sometimes our outdoor spaces can be spoiled by litter and dog waste, which can damage the environment, wildlife and even our health. So let's all clean up. Bring all litter home, keep the dog on the lead and clean up after them. That way, we leave the outdoors as we find it, for everyone to enjoy. And remember, love this place, leave no trace. From Leave No Trace Ireland and its partners.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now, you're very welcome back. So we are going through the Sunday Papers. We have Michael Verney of the Irish Independent with us, and Bernard Jackman, former Irish international, coach as well at Grenoble and with the Dragons. I'll run you through the headlines first of all. As you can imagine, lots of England into semi-final back pages. England set up Dane's semi. That is the back page of the Sunday Mirror. Harry Kane's Ukraine to fire 3 lines into last 4. And then beneath that we have Limerick and Cork. Winning start for champs, but Kylie wants even more. This was Limerick beating Cork last night. 122 to Cork's 118. Although I think Limerick scored 2 goals. That score might be wrong. 222 to 118 I think was the score. But anyway, Limerick are through to a Munster final. We'll find out today who joins them. Back page of the Sunday World, we have Harry Kane here. Kane's ready for the Danes, scored 2 last night. King Harry seals a semi-spot as England run riot. And then beneath that, the scenes at full time. Dublin hurlers celebrating at Croke Park in front of 8,000 fans. Sean McGoldrick here. Dub hurlers shock Galway. And over on the right hand side, Ireland blossom at Aviva. This was Ireland 39, Japan 31 at the Aviva Stadium. Sun Sport, we have Crum of Comfort. This is Dublin, and it's Chris Crummey who scored a crucial second half goal. Galway very flat yesterday at Croke Park. And then beneath that, Euro 2020 here on the back page of the Sun. Then there were 4. England and Denmark advance. Ukraine 0, England 4. And over on the left hand side, Coleman's on a mission. Seamus Coleman insisting Stephen Kenny building for the future, with Ireland talking about how good he thought the summer camp was. You could see what we're trying to do in games. And if you didn't hear Stephen Kenny's interview actually during the week with Nathan, well worth catching. I'm sure you've seen the headlines, but there's loads of great stuff in the interview beyond just the headline. So Roman Roar, Ukraine 0, England 4. It's a picture of Harry Maguire after he scored about 30-40 seconds into the second half last night. Ian Stewart for the Mail. England scorched into the Euro 2020 semi-finals. Danes lie in wait. And Blue Wonders, magnificent Dublin, stunned tribesmen. The Sunday Times go with the picture of Harry Kane celebrating his opening goal, getting a hug from Raheem Sterling after Sterling's brilliant pass, it must be said. Kane leads thrashing of Ukraine to set up Euro semi with Denmark. And over on the left-hand side, GAA unveil finalised committee for Sliotar. So this is Dennis Walsh, and a new GAA committee is to consider all things regarding the Sliotar, the weight of the ball, also the bounciness, the size of the rims and the materials in its makeup. So that would be interesting. Camogie Association represented on that committee as well. And then Sunday Independent, it's a picture of the Dubs yesterday. Dublin Delight. It's Chris Crummey wheeling away after he scores his goal, pumping his fist, green helmet. Crummey's goal seals shock win as Limerick see off Cork. And then beneath that, James Ryan saying that the World Cup defeat was a motivation. Crowd of 3,000 treated to a 9-try thriller at Aviva Stadium. Bernard Jackman, Michael Verney, both with us. Michael, that front page story on the Sunday Times, the GAA, they've unveiled their committee to look into the Sliotar. So they'll consider everything: the weight of the ball, the bounciness, the size of the rims, the materials in its makeup. This has been much talked about for several seasons now, I would say, Michael, and in particular over the last couple of weeks. Too easy to score points is the general consensus. Are you in favour of doing something about the Sliotar?
But I tell you what, if you were looking at Galway yesterday in Croke Park, you wouldn't say it was too easy. You couldn't have had any money on them putting up the tally that they did put up. But it's good to see that they are reacting to it, and obviously some very big GA heads and big hurling heads amongst that committee. So it's good to see it. I did a piece there a couple of weeks ago just comparing the averages of points scored or tally scored in each league game, and it actually jumped up 7 points in this year's league compared to any other league in history. So it was 41 points on average scored in last year's league, and it jumped up to 48 this year. Now there's a combination of factors, the weather, the time of the year, the fact that the league maybe wasn't as competitive this year, but the ball is definitely something that does need to be looked at. I know James Skehill was on with your good selves talking about the size of the rims, and the rims are definitely much smaller, and it does make it easier to control a ball now, and makes it easier to strike a ball 100 yards accurately as well. So it's good to see that they're on top of it straight away. Ned Quinn is obviously chairing that committee, so yeah, it'd be interesting to see the findings that they have. I don't think it's not massive changes that are needed with the ball. It's probably just maybe a slightly bigger rim, and maybe it's only talking about a couple of grams of weight, just to make sure that it's not a flick of the wrist from 100 yards that puts the ball over the bar. But I think it's interesting when spectators were back in grounds yesterday, and particularly that first game in Croke Park, how the pressure heightened on players, and how much maybe we saw in last year's Winter Championship, just how easy it was to score and how little pressure there was on. And it's hard to beat that kind of cauldron kind of feeling, or the effect that it puts on players. And that was something they didn't experience last year, and they didn't experience much during the league. So I always like to see mistakes. I always like to see misses, because it's nearly more entertaining to see how a lad reacts, or how a team reacts to a mistake. So I think looking at the ball is a key thing in hurling, just to make sure that we're not running away with ourselves, and we're not, it's not 225 to 224 every day we go out.
Yeah. So we've lots to get through. There's loads of Euros coverage. There's loads of hurling reports on a box office day yesterday. There's a great DJ Carey interview on his pro-am, Rory McIlroy. Paul Kimmage is writing about horse racing, FAI finances. There's Liam Brady in the Mail on Sunday as well with Philip Quinn. There's some Wimbledon pieces I know, Michael, you wanted to get to. On the rugby front, Bernard, 2 games yesterday. Just to start in Ireland for a moment, 39 points to 31 win against Japan. Peter O'Reilly here, 3,000 punters granted the privilege of watching Japan in the flesh. They're a joy to behold, he writes. He makes the point, Ireland outscored Japan by 5 tries to 4 yesterday, but when the visitors were at full pelt, you felt you were watching rugby as it was meant to be played. Daring and darting, everyone alert to the possibilities presented by a turnover, quick to see space and to run into it. Whereas 4 of Ireland's 5 tries were effectively conceived in the video analysis suite and honed on the training pitches, Japan brought spontaneity, epitomised by their fly half, who created 2 tries with the invention of his kicking from the hand. Caelan Doris and Jacob Stockdale attempted to emulate Japan's offloading game, but their strike rate was poor. At times Ireland looked rusty, hardly surprising, seeing as none of them had played in over a month. And I must say, watching the game yesterday, almost surprising that Ireland went in at the break leading somehow, because there was a 20-minute spell there in that first half in particular where Japan were just cutting loose, and it was, as Peter O'Reilly says, a joy to watch. And you kind of thought, well, that's the rugby I'd like us to play, and that's the rugby I'd like to watch every week.
Yeah, and that's the rugby that we said we were going to start to transition towards after the Rugby World Cup. If you remember, there was David Nucifora said there was a skills deficit in our game, and unfortunately 2 years on, when you watched that game yesterday, I think it's commonly accepted. Well, I would say that Japan are the more skillful side, both in terms of their speed of thought, an ability to spot an opportunity and take it, but also their all-around speed of handling, footwork in contact. Some of their attacking kicks were phenomenal, and that's probably the area that disappointed me the most, or has disappointed me the most, in terms of we were always seen as being expert kickers, and we used to be told, or certainly the English and the Welsh and Scots, that we have a natural advantage because of Gaelic games. But I think we've seen other teams get much better quite quickly in terms of their range of attacking kicks, and I think Japan showed us yesterday what you can do in terms of that ability to kick pass or find space in behind. I know Joey Carberry had a little chip over that he regathered, and we scored from it. So it's not across the board. Jack Carty, Johnny Sexton, etc. are phenomenal kickers, but I think the Japanese skill set is far better. And yesterday, I think we were able to overpowered them, and I think they ran out of steam a little bit, which is very unusual. But the last 20 minutes, they had a lot of ball, but they seemed to be fatigued, and our defence got on top. But certainly for 60 minutes, I thought they showed us how the game can be played in a different way. And I think we always will have to be good at the structured stuff, and that's an area that we are good at, and that's what led us the game yesterday. But I think we would like to see a development in terms of the unstructured. And it's interesting. I mean, for a country that are chasing to be more skillful, I don't think we have a skills coach at the moment. So Richie Murphy was a skills coach. He's now head coach of the under-20s, and he hasn't really been replaced. So it's not really aligned. And look at the lads did well to win. There was a huge effort, etc., etc. But definitely, I think they showed us there's a level of skill that we still have to strive to get to.
I was thinking the same thing. I thought, geez, 2019, this is a nice check-in to see how much Ireland have progressed in the departments that they wanted to progress in after that 2019 defeat. And the answer was probably not all that much when you saw Japan in full flow. So there was consensus across the board on this. Neil Francis, for instance, he says, at the Aviva, if this Irish performance was revenge for the World Cup, well, this dish was served straight out of the microwave. For long periods, Ireland were simply embarrassed by Japan's pizzazz and mental agility. The Japanese still have a stronger command of the basics, and their passing and handling left Ireland looking like second-class citizens when it came to this particular skill. He talks about the Japanese 11 offloads, and then Ireland had 4. But what the stats don't tell you is that when Ireland tried, almost as many as the Japanese, except they ended up being reported as handling errors or turnovers. It's embarrassing to consider that when Ireland tried to get into the spirit of things, they were hopelessly inadequate in terms of trying to master a skill that's almost totally alien to them. Anticipation is the key here. Most Irish players are looking for a clear out as opposed to receipt of an offload when an Irish ball carrier is tackled. When the ball does get popped up, it's treated as if it's a successor to the Delta variant, which is another good line. So, but again, this is stuff we've been saying for a long time, Bernard, that the Irish are very ruck focused. They're not alive to the possibility of offloads, and it's a skill set that seems alien to them. And you kind of, we see the odd offload here or there, and we think, oh, this is great progress. And during the Six Nations, we've gone up to 4 offloads today, and that's better than the 2 we had the week before. And then Japan come along and they just show us a different plane altogether. Yeah, but the interesting thing, Joe, is that probably the game seems to be going towards that offload, keep the ball alive, to use Ronan O'Gara's phrase. If you look at what's happening elsewhere, so Wales won the Six Nations. Wayne Pivac with Scarlets, and what he's trying to do with Wales is play with real ambition and play with high tempo and playing on your feet. The Exeter Harlequins final in the Premiership last week was an incredibly high-scoring game. Harlequins had the worst defence in the Premiership, won the title. Bristol were the top team at the end of the season in terms of the league before it went to the playoffs. One of the top attacks. France play a good attacking game. Toulouse, La Rochelle, the 2 European finalists. The final was a bit dour, but in general, they're teams who have a real focus on skillful players playing attacking rugby, taking risks. So it looks like the Springboks won the World Cup with a set piece defence, kicking game mindset. But at the moment, attack seems to be a way that a lot of teams are chasing. Our focus on attack is a way a lot of teams are chasing success and getting reward for that. So it's not just that we want to go and see our team entertain us. I think it can actually be a brilliant way to play the game. Very, very enjoyable. It can help you. You can win, especially if you're not as physically dominant as England can be or South Africa can be, which we aren't. I mean, we don't have 30 power athletes. We always have to think a little bit smarter, play a little bit smarter. So, it's not just that we want to sit there and clap and enjoy, a high tempo game and skills. I think we can actually do both together. And I think, to be honest, the profile of our players is we have to go down that route because we aren't set up to be a dominant defensive set piece kicking game team. Yeah. Did you catch any of the rugby yesterday, Michael, or were you head deep into the hurling, I'd say, at that stage?
Yeah, no, it was wall-to-wall GA. I drove down to Portlaoise yesterday. The Offaly Miners were playing the Leinster final, and that carried over to listening to Galway and Dublin on the radio, and then catching it on TV, and then catching Kilkenny and Wexford on TV, and then Cork and Limerick on TV. So there wasn't much room for anything else. But just something Bernard was saying there I thought was interesting. As a coach, Bernard, how easy or difficult is it to make that transition? Like, we're talking, like, we want more offloads, we want more of an expansive game. Like, are you talking about a complete sea change in how your sessions are taking place day to day, or is it a gradual kind of a process? And how do you make those integrations in training sessions almost, so that you're basically trying to change the way you play and the culture, the type of game? How exactly does that manifest itself from day to day? Like,
yeah, look, I think you need to set out your philosophy. So in fair, and this is the worrying thing for me, is that when Mike Catt came in, he said all the right things about, you know, where he wants to go in terms of evolving our game, giving players freedom to make decisions, to take risks, etc. And then you would obviously like to be consistent in terms of that philosophy. So if the coach, you know, 3 months in after a couple of defeats, changes tact and says, look, no, we're going to be risk adverse, well then, you know, that can lead to problems. But I haven't seen or heard anything from our management or players to say that there has been a step back or a shift. So you would like to believe that all the training and all the reviews, etc., and selection should be based around picking the best players, preparing the players in the best way to deliver that. And at international level, you can do that. You have freedom of choice in terms of selection, and also you freedom in terms of how you set up to play. So I think there hasn't been the transfer from training ground to pitch that we would have liked, and that's obviously a worry. But I think you can change it quite quickly. I mean, players are adaptable. They will have been used to lots of different playing styles all the way through their career, and generally a pre-season is the best time to do it. I've seen coaches change tact in season and within a week, you know, change the philosophy. Now normally it's easier to close up a little bit, you know, quickly rather than open up. But yeah, that's the worrying thing for me, is that I haven't seen a big improvement. And now I know there's been different challenges with COVID, but they have actually been in camp a long time since the World Cup. So that's a little bit disappointing or concerning.
Yeah, because you were definitely very down on what you saw in the Six Nations right up until the England game. Yeah,
and look at that. And the England game was great, but my fear is that was built on a lot of emotion of CJ's last game, emotion of the fact it was England. The players felt under pressure, and England also, let's be honest, they had a shock in Six Nations. I mean, they had a massive review, an audit of the performance. So it's still, in my mind, it's still to be proven that wasn't an outlier, and that we've turned a corner. Look, at yesterday was a win. The coaches will take positives from it, etc. But I still would like to see more evidence that we really have turned the corner. And England was great. In that 80 minutes, there was a huge amount of positives, but in the cold light of day, when you look at the England that turned up and what they'd done in the previous 5 games, there were signs that they're not really at the top. And I think Eddie Jones is actually now, he's evolving. He's looking to see where the next trend is, and he'll be very good at chasing that and getting that right. And I just fear that maybe we're getting caught up in little short wins, like beat Japan with a very experienced team. Yeah, we're sorted. Whereas the reality is, if we come out of this 2-match block and we haven't really found three players who can start for us in November, it's been a waste. And I know Andy Farrell has to win the game, etc. But like giving Gavin Coombs 12 minutes, you know, Craig Casey, I know there was a reason with backs injuries, etc. 74 seconds or whatever. It's not really giving guys who've shown up during the year an opportunity to do something. And next week against America, it's going to be far easier. So even if someone shoots the house down next week, Japan was more of a test opportunity to really see what someone was like. But look, that's international rugby, and Andy Farrell's coach for a reason. But yeah, I do think that England, just because we beat England and beat Japan, I'm still not 100% sure we know where we're going. Yeah,
that's fair enough. Gents, back to you in 1 second. Let's go to Michael Meehan, though. Dr. Hyde Park, Roscommon against Galway. I have us pretty much on the cusp of half time. Is it, Michael? Galway ahead by 1?
Yeah, it's just whistle just blown, players leaving the pitch. 1-5 to Galway, 7 points to Roscommon. It's been far more entertaining since we last spoke, Joe. Galway with a goal, well worked. Paul Kelly finishing it to the net after some good work by his brother Sean and his fellow teammate Peter Cook. Roscommon, a couple of lovely scores from Conor Daly. From the Smiths have got 3 points between them. Matthew Tierney has kicked a free and Shane Walsh has kicked a free for Galway. So, a lot of the hard ball in around the middle in the last 10 minutes is probably going Roscommon's way from kickouts. So they'll be very happy with that. That's an issue that Galway will need to look at just as we go in with the narrowest of margins. Thanks, Michael.
Back to you very shortly. So Galway by 1 at half-time. The other game underway is in Leinster. We're about 25 minutes gone between Laois and Westmeath. It's Westmeath by a point, 7 points to Laois's 1-3. Back with Bernard Jackman and Michael Verney in just a second.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
This weekend on News Talk, we've teamed up with the Insolvency Service of Ireland to offer insight and advice on debt and financial struggles. Find out how the ISI can help at newstalk.com/tips.
The wait is over as the Lions return to South Africa, live on Sky Sports.
Oh, the Lions going to party again!
Watch every tour match live.
He's gone through!
Every tackle, every try, every kick. Half price for 6 months.
That is incredible!
Don't miss it.
History made!
To join or upgrade and get Sky Sports half price for 6 months, search Get Sky Sports. New sports customers only. Startup pricing applies after 6 months. Further terms apply.
At Vodafone Business, we've seen incredible resilience shine through Irish businesses, and we know that we can. We can find new ways of doing things. We can work smarter, not harder. We can connect wherever we are. We can take business to the next level with Vodafone technology across broadband, mobile and cloud solutions. Search Vodafone Business to find out more. Together, we can.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
By working together, Ireland has made great progress in our battle against COVID-19. The vaccination programme is a huge success. 4 million doses of vaccine have now been administered. Hundreds of thousands more are delivered every week. This will have an enormous impact on our level of protection in the coming months. However, the Delta variant is now beginning to dominate here and elsewhere in Europe. We know that it spreads more rapidly than previous variants, and we know vaccination is key to protection. We are in a race against the variant, so when your chance for a vaccine comes, take it. It's for all of us. It is vital that we safeguard the progress we have made. We therefore have to adjust our reopening plan. So from Monday, the following will apply. Up to 200 people may attend organised outdoor events in the majority of venues, and up to 500 for stadia or venues with capacity greater than 5,000, with appropriate protective measures. Sport and cultural pilot live events are continuing throughout July. Up to 50 guests may attend weddings. Continue to work from home unless absolutely necessary to attend in person. Please remember the public health guidelines. Think outdoors, and even outdoors, keep your distance, avoid crowds, and wear a face covering when in busy places. Shop safely and socialise safely. For up-to-date information, please go to gov.ie. Supported by the Government of Ireland.
Our intercity trains are now operating at 50% capacity, in line with public health guidelines. That means if you have a journey, you must pre-book your intercity ticket at irishrail.ie. Thank you for helping us all stay safe. From Éireann Road Éireann, part of the Transport for Ireland network.
Show me the science.
Proudly sponsored by B. Braun.
With Professor Luke O'Neill.
A News Talk original podcast series focusing on different issues, from the serious to the silly. All explained through science. Catch up on the podcast series at newstalk.com or on the News Talk app. Powered by GoLoud. Listen in the car with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto on the News Talk app. Powered by GoLoud.
Across Ireland. This is the IMRO Radio Awards National Station of the Year. This is News Talk.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Murphy. The head of the HSE says there's currently no plan to prioritise the vaccination of teenagers ahead of the return of schools in September. However, Paul Reid says all options and scenarios are being looked at when it comes to rolling out vaccines to 12 to 15-year-olds. EU regulators approved the use of the Pfizer jab for teens in May, and the National Immunisation Advisory Committee is expected to issue new advice shortly. Paul Reid says the guidance will determine what happens between now and the start of schools in September.
It's not currently built into the base plan that we have, but look, everything that we have done has always been modified our plan based on emerging evidence. So we'll wait and assess any recommendations come from them. But right now we're motoring on with the programme as we've currently set it out.
Some pharmacies are reporting waiting lists of more than 25,000 people for 18 to 34-year-olds hoping to get a COVID vaccine. From tomorrow, people in that age group can receive the single-shot Johnson & Johnson jab at a chemist. The Irish Pharmacy Union says its members have received around 10 calls for every available dose since the announcement. Ciara Toolan from Adrian Dunn Pharmacies says there's been a huge level of interest among young people.
We have the waiting list there with the 25,000 people on it, all in the 18 to 34 age bracket.
The Sinn Féin leader says she'd be very reluctant to support any legislation restricting access to pubs and restaurants. The government is examining the prospect of only allowing those who are vaccinated, recovered from COVID or have a negative test access to indoor dining. Mary Lou MacDonald says having restrictions in law is not something she'd be in favour of.
For me, I'm uncomfortable and unhappy with anything that says to a section of our people, particularly younger people, that they will be excluded from enjoying services that are available to others and that young people in huge numbers actually run and provide for others. I think that's hugely problematic.
The Foreign Affairs Minister says there has to be generosity on both sides in order to find solutions to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Simon Coveney says the EU moved in a positive way this week by extending the chilled meats grace period, and it's time for the UK government to reciprocate. It comes as the DUP leader is urging the UK to unite against the protocol. And UEFA is investigating after a Denmark fan had a pride flag confiscated at the Euro 2020 quarter-final in Baku. Sponsor Volkswagen also claims it's been prevented from publishing rainbow-themed advertising in Azerbaijan and Russia. UEFA says it never instructed stewards before the Denmark-Czech Republic match or in any other stadium to confiscate rainbow flags. It's 2 minutes past 2.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. School's out. Time for a family holiday in Spain, Italy, Portugal and Greece.
Widespread showers today, and there's a chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highest temperatures 15 to 19 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Now you're very welcome back. So we're looking through the Sunday papers. We have Michael Verney of the Irish Independent with us. We have Bernard Jackman as well. It's half-time between Roscommon and Galway at Dr. Hyde Park, Connacht semi-final. Roscommon 7 points, Galway 1-5, so Galway leading by 1. Meanwhile, we are 33 minutes into the game between Laois and Westmeath, and it's all square there. Laois 1-6, Westmeath 9 points. That's Leinster football quarter-final. Lads, just to finish up on the rugby, Michael, I apologise here. Can we stick with this egg chasing for just one more short section? I'd say you spit in the ground when you saw that ad. This is rugby country, did you?
I wouldn't say spit in the ground now, but I wouldn't exactly be lauding it or anything.
I wouldn't be lauding it either, just to be clear.
Well, it's rugby country for the next 2-3 minutes if I can. Just on the lines yesterday, Bernard. So Neil Francis, for instance, says, well, I mean, it's all absolutely pointless, really, some of these warm-up games at this stage. He said in years gone by, South African provincial sides would perform the job of softening up the lines, and then it would also mean that the lines were tested physically, battle-hardened. That's simply not the case anymore. The whole concept of this type of touring is archaic. These matches don't tell us anything that more than we already know. They're a complete waste of time. He does concede, however, it's important to navigate the run-up to the Test series without accumulating injuries, build a bit of momentum, and get the Test team humming, or at least functioning. The only positive thing we got yesterday was that nobody got injured. This was the Lions beating the Sigma Lions by 56 points to 14. So he's had a few things to throw to you. I'm going to throw 3 quick things to get your thoughts on, and then we'll move on. Finn Russell's like one of those slot machine junkies in Las Vegas who takes another spin on the machine without realising that there are consequences to his actions. Yes, some of his cross kicks worked, some of them didn't, but you cannot gamble with the sort of flagrant disregard with which Russell plays the game in a test environment, particularly in a Lions test environment. Whereas a couple of others thought, OK, Russell did reasonably well. He might play himself onto the bench for a test match. Could Russell make the bench as a gamble laid on if the Lions need to win?
Yeah, I would agree with him about Russell. I wouldn't be as harsh as Fano, but I don't think many people can. But yeah, I wouldn't have him starting a test match for the Lions in this series.
Okay.
But certainly, if the game was gone against you, yeah, he has the ability to unlock defences. So potentially impact player off the bench,
right?
But maybe not even the 23.
But your worry would be then your out half gets injured in the first 5 minutes, and Finn Russell is guiding you through, I guess. Okay, next to Neil Francis then. He said he also had impressions confirmed that Johnny Hill is one of the worst second rows ever to be picked by the Lions.
Yeah, and he called him, he said, compared him to Benny Hill, which again is incredibly harsh, and only Neil could do it. I don't agree with that. I think Johnny Hill is a very good player.
Okay.
He wasn't dominant yesterday, but no, he's a good player.
Okay, and then yesterday, the first time Neil Francis said he spent looking at Chris Harris to see why he was brought on tour. I've watched matches over the last season or two where the Scottish centre was an active participant, and I'm still at a loss to understand Warren Gatland's extraordinary leap of faith. I did notice that Brendan Fanning on the next page, and this is the beauty of rugby, I suppose, and opinions, he said Chris Harris made a very positive impression at 13. So where are you on the Harris debate there?
Harris is good. I think Neil has had an issue with Harris before the tour. I don't think he's judging him fairly on yesterday's performance. So I think Bundy and Robbie have a cracking chance. They did well, but Harris is a good player, and he's definitely a profile that Gatland could use regularly in this competition.
Well, I found the harshness of his column thoroughly enjoyable, I have to say.
No, absolutely.
And then just one last one, and this is the real one I want to get your thoughts on, and we'll leave the Lions because I don't know how much there is to say about 56 points to 14. The Sigma Lions will be the weakest opposition that the British and Irish Lions will face on this tour. Just on Owen Farrell, Stuart Barnes here on page 19 is talking about the Owen Farrell situation. He was saying it was a good thing not to make Farrell the captain yesterday because it would be a burden on him and there's enough pressure on him as he's trying to rediscover his form. So on Farrell, he said twice he lost possession. He was uncomfortable in the role of heavy-duty carrier, which I suppose won't surprise anyone. And then while his organising and encouraging tones echoed around an empty Ellis Park, there were few tangible positives. It was his missed tackle that set an uninspired home team en route for the try line, slow to adopt his position, sloppy in the tackle. It was an undoubted negative in these early days. And then he says, frankly, the first 40 minutes were a reminder that he's struggling for form. The idea of 12 is not without merit, especially as a backup kicker with Russell on the bench, but he is devoid of confidence. And then he said Gatland gave Farrell 20 minutes at fly half. He did nothing wrong, but if he is to start the series, he needs to be doing a lot more. So that was Stuart Barnes in the Sunday Times talking about Owen Farrell. It's amazing on Farrell. Lots of really shrewd operators in the punditry world that you would turn to all the time have just diametrically opposed views on Farrell at 12 or not at 12. So even just in the last week, I know Shane Organ really likes him as that second playmaker at 12. Obviously Eddie Jones likes him at 12. Gatland has played him at 12 in New Zealand. And then equally Luke Fitzgerald says it's an abomination of an idea to put him at 12. At 10 you've got a really good physical 10, put him in 12 and suddenly South Africans look at that midfield and think, well, we mightn't run over them, but they're certainly not going to dominate us in defence. Ronan O'Gara was on the show this week, said Farrell's a 10. It's 10. The further you push him away from 10, you dilute him. So where are you on this Farrell at 10 or 12 thing? And what is the logic either way? Is it just down to size that he can't play there, or what's the story?
Yeah, I see him as a 10 who's a very good 12, depending on how you want to play the game. So I can absolutely see the value. I don't think him and Russell are a good combination. Like yesterday, they were trying to use him as a battering ram at time, and their timing was off. I think actually he could be a better 12 with Bigger, who's very similar mindset, both very structured, very organised, and they kind of pre-plan things, whereas Russell likes to play off the cuff, which wouldn't suit Farrell. Yeah, I think he's going to be. I don't think he'll start. I think Bigger's going to start 10, and they'll go for a physical 12 and 13, with maybe being on the bench to come on as a 10 or 12, depending how the game is going. look, he's had a difficult season with England. He's been in a championship with Saracens. It will take him a little while to get up to speed, and he mightn't have time. You know, he might, based on yesterday's game and his inability to really smash holes against an average enough Sigma lines, he might now be a little bit behind. Robbie obviously having a little hamstring worry might give him another game quickly, which should be advantageous for him. But I think he's a 10 who can play 12 very well. But I think his best shot at starting on this Leinster tour is to start at 10.
Okay. Michael, enough of that nonsense. We're talk
getting into the meat and drink of the weekend
about
now,
the real business. Yeah, let's get on to the real stuff. So, the hurling yesterday, the championship exploded to life. Extraordinary day at Croke Park. Any pieces catch your eye? Can you explain to me what happened in Galway? Do you agree with Davy that Wexford were better than Kilkenny? Give me the good stuff here.
Yeah, it's funny, as you say, a lot of the papers are just full of match reports, and usually you wouldn't be that intrigued by them, but there's lots of interesting little bits and pieces everywhere, and I suppose it didn't really go to script. Like, with the best of it in the world, there's very few, unless they had a really intimate knowledge of Dublin hurling and what's been going on in the camp, that could have predicted what happened in that first game yesterday. Galway obviously missed a lot, but Dublin, to a man, were brilliant. Players really came of age yesterday, and it's funny, the 2019 win against Galway looked like it was going to be, almost like the rocket fuel for Matty Kenny's reign as Galway manager. Then they're beaten by Laois 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden, 2 years later now, this could just turn around his reign completely and turn around Dublin hurling completely. They have a chance to win the Leinster title. They're in an All-Ireland quarter-final at the very least at this stage, which is huge for them. And as you said about Davy there, like that Kilkenny and Wexford game was brilliant again. There's never been anything between them since Davy has come to Wexford. I think it's 2 wins apiece now and a draw, and I suppose if you include yesterday, it'd be another draw. But that just had so much drama. There's a minute clip going around there. I think Ray Boyne put it up on Twitter, and it's got everything you want in Championship hurling. And as Michael Verney commented on it this morning, he just said, like, if a referee wanted to be picky, he could actually probably blow about 20 frees. But it's just all action, ball is in play for a minute. There must be 26 players in view at different stages. Speed, athleticism, great defensive skills, everything. And that's just kind of what we got yesterday. And all the negative talk about hurling maybe that we've had throughout the league, we've had that before. And I think I said it to you before, Joe. It does, when new rules come in and different interpretations, it does take a couple of games to get used to it. But like yesterday was brilliant. And even Limerick yesterday evening, the air of invincibility is definitely back when you're beating Cork by 8 points with a lot of their big guns not even playing well. You asked me about just a couple of pieces that are interesting today. Obviously, Tip and Clare today is the big game. Interesting piece in the Daily Mail from Philip Flanagan. A big question when you talk about every game, I suppose, that Clare play. The big question is who's going to pick up Tony Kelly. It's the same when Kilkenny play. That's the main question that's asked. And Philip Flanagan just had a couple of great lines on it in today's Mail. Just find him here because he's just such a marquee player that the opposition manager just places so much stock on trying to stop him. And he just had a couple of great lines. Just at the very start, he just said, "Watch the opposition teams try to deal with Tony Kelly. Feels like one of those magician's tricks, the type that escapologist Harry Houdini made famous, where you put him in a straitjacket, wrap him in chains, put him in a box, and drop him into a tank of water before he magically frees himself to gasps of amazement from a disbelieving audience. The long line of shackles and chains and various tools to tie down hurling's most elusive player have been tried out by various management teams down through the years. It has all been to little discernible effect." And that's just, like, I've said it a couple of times before. Clare have been missing various big guns in recent years. I'd love to know whether Brian Lohan had a conversation with him or it just something clicked in Tony's head where he realises, my game is at a really high level, but I'm going to have to take it to another level. And the performance he's delivered with Ballier for the last 10 years, he's literally delivering them nearly every day with Clare. It's an absolute joy to watch. There was 90 seconds into that game last week against Waterford, and he had this ridiculous point scored over the shoulder that he had no right to even take on. But he just does really, really special things. And the big question is always how you're going to tie him down. And it sounds easy, and maybe it should be easier than you think it is, but he's just so elusive. And I think tying down TJ Reid, it's just such an interesting conundrum for all these different managers, and it's going to be interesting to see what Liam Sheedy does today to try and tie him down. Probably Brendan Matter or Cottle Barrett. And interesting, there's a piece Dermot Crowe has a profile piece done with Cathal Barrett in the Sindo today, an interesting piece as well. He's obviously had his bits of controversy down through the years, but no doubt that he's one of the best marquee cornerbacks in the game. So if they duel today at some stage, Barrett and Kelly, that's going to be really interesting.
And Michael, on Dublin, so I think we're pretty familiar with Wexford and Kilkenny, and geez, Cody is just something else. You were watching him there at half-time and extra time, and you just thought, he's demanding a win here, and there is just something extraordinary about the man. On Dublin and Maddie Kenny, are they coming again? Are they a coming force again back to the Anthony Daly days, or was this, with the greatest respect to Dublin, was this maybe a bit more about Galway being extremely flat on the day?
No, Galway were flat early, but no, Dublin, like, in fairness to Matty Kenny, he'd been saying it throughout the league that, you know, their only goal was championship. They were building, and I among many other pundits, would have been predicting that Antrim probably had a good shot against them in that first round game. Absolutely blew them out of the water. I think it was 18 points. Carried in that form against, let's call it a spade, the second favourites to win in All-Ireland, the one team that people think can take down Limerick, and all of a sudden they're gone out of Leinster with their tail between their legs. And from a Galway point of view, it's really interesting. That was like a Galway performance that you would have seen maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when they were really inconsistent and you didn't know what you were going to get from them on a given day. So it's really going to be really interesting to see how they bounce back. From a Dublin point of view, like, lads kind of came of age yesterday. People mightn't have known much about the likes of Darrell Gray, even Keane O'Callaghan, and even Paddy Smith. They even won the game at the end with Owen O'Donnell off the pitch, and there was no last-ditch defending. It was all really cool, calm, collected stuff. They were walking the ball out of defence. Galway had an extra man back. They were being really cute on the ball, and you know, we've been probably waiting 8 years for it, and we always talk about his 2013 form, but Danny Sutcliffe was back to his best yesterday. And I know Tommy Walsh was on yesterday saying about how much trouble Danny Sutcliffe gave him in 2013. He was back to that type of form yesterday, and like, there's never been much between them and Kilkenny in recent years, and having beaten Galway, like, look at the momentum they're bringing into the game. They needed a win like that. They needed to take down a big marquee team, and now the season could totally up. They could be in an All-Ireland semi-final with a win in the Leinster final, and few would have predicted that. So the whole season opens up for them or Kilkenny. So that makes that Leinster final really, really intriguing. And what you say about Cody, like, the talk in the winter, you know, about him being replaced or this being his last year, it looks comical now at this stage. It really, really does. They were down a man. They lost Owen Murphy in extra time, and all of a sudden they come out and hit, I think it was 1-6 without reply.
Yeah.
Like Bernard as a coach and a manager, like a head coach, like, to have that, to breed that into a jersey or a player is just phenomenal. What he does, they all wear the club jerseys and they're very good players. They put on the black and amber and they just, whatever it is, he just turns them into different men. And it's a quality that every manager and coach in the world would love to have. It's almost like the All Blacks. They put on that jersey and all of a sudden they realise there's a responsibility. And I'm saying that, and I've said it with limited ability compared to the teams that they've had, they're still almost punching above their weight in my view.
Yeah. I mean, this is pure scoreboard journalism, but even just watching the body language at half-time, you know, Davy Fitz, you can see the bond he has with the players, and I think he was grabbing one of them by the jersey and it was really like cajoling them and come on, we can do it. And like, Davy's won it on Ireland, he's a legendary manager, but there was a certain closeness there and it was like, come on, we can. And it cut to Cody. And again, there's about 2 feet between him and all the players around him, and he's just standing there, and there was just this sense of him saying, you're doing this. This is not optional. You're just going out and you're doing it and you're finding a way to win. And like, he's had some remarkable days of late for a man who's been criticised. Like the win against Limerick, maybe his finest hour, Michael, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. It's funny, Joe, people look at it and say, oh, he hasn't won All-Ireland since 2015. That's fair enough. In 18, they won a Division 1 league against the grain. In 19, they beat the All-Ireland champions, probably the best performance in recent years. Last year, they obviously won a Leinster, probably against the head for most people. This year, they're back in the Leinster final already and 1 win away from being in an All-Ireland semi-final. So, like, change is great.
Yeah.
Change is great if you know, like, the change is going to push you on and you're going to improve. But, like, to me, what he's getting out of this squad is phenomenal. And we've always said that different guys need to pitch in and add in and help out TJ. Owen Cody stood up yesterday with 1-5, and there'll probably be somebody else standing up the next day. So it's amazing. It's amazing how he continues to evolve. And as you say, he has that kind of old school mentality, but they're obviously mixing that with modern techniques on the training pitch, because they have totally changed how to play in recent years. They play a possession game now, essentially, and that's diametrically opposed to, I'm sure, what he even believes in. But he realises that he has to adapt and adapt to the way hurling has changed. So he might still manage guys something similar to he did 15 or 20 years ago. But what they're doing on the pitch is completely different, and they've definitely adapted.
Yeah, and look, they were fit as a fiddle into the second half of extra time as well. So Michael Carey scored the last point for Kilkenny yesterday evening at Croke Park, son of DJ Carey. This is where time is now. Page 18-19 in the Sunday Independent. This is just cracking interview. Dermot Gilleese with DJ Carey. You might have seen the photos during the week from Mount Juliet. The Pro-Am on Wednesday featured Rory McIlroy and his father with Johnny Sexton and DJ Carey. So Dermot Gilleese thought, well, I'll chat to DJ Carey about this experience, and there's great stuff in it. DJ Carey, like, blown away by the whole experience. I felt incredibly blessed to have this opportunity playing with such a lovely, lovely guy. Carey's a 2 handicap and he's a member of Mount Juliet, and he was talking about his game. He said that he, great replacement for him, how he quickly got down to 6 and then he wanted to go down to scratch. He got down to 1.5. He said, I've since discovered you have to be exceptional to make it to the top in any sport. Absolutely exceptional. He said, sure, I'd love to play golf off scratch or better, but when I got down to 1.5, other things took over my life. I'd serious financial issues and health problems for a while. There was a time when I couldn't afford to be a member of a golf club and to actually play the game, but you never give up on your dreams, which is amazing comment. And I love this. This is worlds colliding. Hurling gave me 2 advantages: hand-to-eye coordination and the physical strength you have to have in your wrist. I take a medium-sized glove, but from watching me at Impact, the coach, David Ledbetter, and for non-golfing types, is an unbelievably famous coach in golf. He obviously came across DJ Carey at some stage. From watching me at Impact, David Ledbetter told me my wrists were up there with the strongest he'd ever seen, which hurling people are nodding, saying, well, naturally. And he says, so Henry Shefflin has just started playing golf. Myself and Henry play a few 9-hole games at 7 in the morning before we both head into work. The idea is to get us in some sort of shape for the Pro-Am. Henry's a beginner, but he has, you won't be surprised to hear, exceptional potential. He only came to the game last year, but he's going to do great things if he applies himself to golf. Don't think it's shocking to anyone to hear Henry Shefflin has good potential as a golfer.
I'd be a good man to get for a classic golf classics this summer, I'd say, where his handicap is still pretty high.
Yeah. And he was saying, he was really keen, I think, DJ Carey, not to betray any of McIlroy's confidence, but he was even making the point. McIlroy was saying if he didn't play golf for a few weeks, he'd lose 20 yards on his drive until he got his swing back up to speed. And here we are, he says, going from our car directly to the first tee, where we hit without even warming up, not realising we're probably 9 holes in before we're swinging properly. And he just says it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, such a bonus, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But there's just a few really interesting tidbits in there, I think, Bernard, and kind of a mad time in DJ Carey's life, where he can't even afford to play golf at one stage. So it's lovely to see him back, and lovely to see him healthy again, and he looked great out there and still playing good golf.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I didn't realise. I knew he had financial difficulties, but I didn't realise how difficult it was. And imagine getting back now playing with Rory McIlroy and Sexton. He seemed to really enjoy it, and he's taken Henry Shefflin under his wing, so it'll be interesting to see how low he can go. But it's a lovely piece, and it's just nice to kind of. He was such a legend on the hurling field, and getting his competitive juices going. Obviously now trying to get that handicap down and go as low as he can go.
Michael, do I have it right? You're a horse racing fan, are you?
Yeah, I am indeed. Yeah. Okay,
so I'm sure you read the Paul Kimmage piece today with great interest, and the Jim Bulger interviews over the last couple of weeks. So page 20 of the Sunday Independent, whistles blowing in the wind. This is Paul Kimmage. Irish racing authorities talk a good anti-doping fight, but the time has come for more than just words. The news this week, if people didn't see it, is that Dennis Egan has announced he's stepping down as the chief executive of the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board. He's 60. He's spent 26 years working with the board. Brian Sheeran in Friday's Racing Post, who Paul Kimmage quotes, says that his decision to leave is due solely to an early retirement scheme, and comes at a time when the regulator has found itself dealing with controversy after the Jim Bulger comments and other issues in the sport. So Dennis Egan at 60 is stepping down in September. So Paul Kimmage's piece, talks about the racing authorities and their work with Teneo in terms of trying to manage the PR situation with all the various controversies over the last while. And then it segues into Jim Bulger again. And Jim Bulger, one of the reasons he's so confident with the question marks he has raised over testing in Ireland is he got a phone call from a trainer in England when he first raised the issue late last year. And so the trainer had bought 6 horses from Ireland and decided just to send off hair samples from the 6 horses recently acquired in Ireland to a laboratory in Suffolk to be analysed. 3 of the 6 showed issues and substances which looked like steroids. And Bulger says, or Kimmage writes, it was this call as much as anything that steeled Bulger's views in his interview with the Sunday Independent. So I guess the kind of eye-catching part of the piece is towards the end, where Paul Kimmage has published the interviews with Jim Bulger and receives an email in. And the email is from somebody in the industry who says, your interview with Mr. Bulger, spot on. It's widely known within the industry. There's a problem within the sport. Not all trainers, but some. I work in it, this anonymous emailer says to Paul Kimmage. I work in it. I've seen it with my own eyes. I started work with a trainer and was actually shown where he kept the drugs in his office by the trainer himself. I was appalled, but more so that everyone at the yard knew it. At the time, I sent an anonymous letter to the IHRB, then the Turf Club, outlining where the drugs were in plain view of the office in a cupboard. No need for a drug dog or high-tech expensive equipment. But nothing was done, not even a yard inspection. This was quite a big, high-profile trainer over a decade ago. Mr. Bulger's also right when he says the staff know better than anyone else. I have friends who have their own stories to tell. I know of one other who claims to have sent an anonymous letter to the IHRB giving explicit details, and nothing was done. I love the industry, the emailer later says, and the majority of people are playing by the rules. And on it goes. And then there's a second emailer that the original emailer mentions who backs up similar tales. So, Michael, I don't think anybody is shocked at all this. I think horse racing has traditionally had question marks over it, but Jim Bulger has raised these issues now. I think there's going to be an Oireachtas hearing coming up very shortly, which Bulger won't attend on legal advice, but the IHRB will be there, Horse Racing Ireland will be there, the Irish Racehorse Trainers Association, the Department of Agriculture. So it's gone to government level now on the back of Jim Bulger's comments. That'll be happening very soon, that committee. And this is a very serious issue for the sport. Like Jim Bulger's talking about the Lance Armstrong situation. That email there is a pretty stark one, which Paul Kimmage published in the paper today. Your general sense of the whole situation at the moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have wanted more detail from Jim initially, rather than just saying, people that work within my yard talking to people or whatever and saying this. And I think there's a lot more detail here, in fairness. That the drug testing that was done on those 6 horses that came from Ireland and landed in Newmarket, I think is fascinating, really. I think that's probably what people wanted to see initially, but it's kind of all coming out in the wash, maybe slowly, week after week after week. That Oireachtas hearing is going to be really, really interesting too. Just that email that was sent to Paul, I think is interesting because, I would have been given anecdotal evidence by some people, not people that you'd necessarily know very well, but people that claimed to have been associated with various yards, and they would have been saying maybe similar things, and that they would have been hearing different things that are going on. So it is definitely out there. That talk is definitely out there. While I know Jessica Harrington has come out saying that she wasn't particularly happy with Jim's comments because every winner now has been almost tainted, and they're asking, is that winner doped? Is this winner doped or whatever? And it's kind of nearly everybody is almost being guilty by association now, which is not the case. You're probably talking about a small number here. It's interesting. Paul uses a piece that Jane Mangan had on that she said in RT Racing at the end of June, just saying, obviously Jim has said it's a Lance Armstrong magnitude case, so that means it's somebody that's competing at the very top, which means that they're competing internationally, which means they're being tested in all different racing jurisdictions, and there hasn't been an Irish horse test positive yet. I think that's interesting as well. There's a lot of different moving kind of pieces here, but I think anybody that would say, and I know you had Ger Lyons on a couple of days after the first piece, and he was really, really interested, and like almost saying, like when someone like Jim Bulger comes out and says something like this, and such a high profile and respected figure, like his words had to be taken really seriously. And I think the more evidence that has been painted here makes an even more kind of compelling case. So, and in fairness to Paul, he's really getting his teeth stuck into this, and he's not letting go of it. And he's obviously, I'd say he's feeling quite a few calls, probably more calls than the IHRB confidential line are feeling. I'd say more people are going to Paul than going to that hotline or that confidential line with information. So this story's not going to go away, and it's not going to go away because there's a very, very high percentage chance that there is high profile cheaters within racing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Like, there are a number of damning claims, obviously, that it's happening, but that's no surprise. Like, find me a sport where it's not happening. The testing not up to scratch, again, I would think that's the case in a lot of sport, although the IHRB are insistent that the testing is up to scratch, and they've been doing hair testing since last summer. The most damning claim on Bulger's part, and this should be teased out, and I'd like to know why he thinks this. And in part, it's because of that story, I suspect, from the English trainer. But he says, I'm inclined to think that we've had instances in the past where action wasn't taken when it should have been. Like, for me, in all of this, that's the most damning thing. Every sport is going to have doping. Every sport is going to have issues where the testing could be better. But to say that he's now alleging there are instances where action wasn't taken when it should have been, that suggests conspiracy right to the very top. That suggests to me, I mean, my thought there is I think of the Agassi book where he's tested positive for crystal meth and he gets a phone call from the tennis authority saying, here, Andre, we've got this finding. Sort yourself out. We'll keep a QT and get you back in action. But, just watch yourself, will you? To me, that's what that sounds like. But again, that's me speculating a touch, and I'm sure the IHRB would refute and reject that allegation. That should be said. But there is a vague, we're at this stage, Bernard, where there's a vagueness. Like Michael raises the point that Jane Mangan makes. Lance Armstrong, does that mean it's the very best because Armstrong was the best, or was Bulger not going for that direct an analogy? Are we talking majority, minority? Are we talking some trainers doping to lose races, like the Viking Horde case a while back? I suppose that one of the most damaging aspects is the fact that there's now all this speculation without answers to those questions. So it's like drip, drip, drip each week at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by this story because A, I'm interested in horse racing, and B, I follow Paul Kimmage. I buy the Sun Independent just for him because I enjoy his riding, and I think this is the best article I've read on this because it's all starting to kind of develop to a certain extent. So obviously, I think that the first couple, the point of them probably were obviously to highlight an issue, but also to flush out some whistleblowers. And it seems now he has. I suppose the two things that jump at me is, the cost. So, and again, you guys might know better than I do, but if this trainer who bought 6 horses from Ireland, he sent the samples to be tested, it cost him 10k. So that's 1,666 a head. It showed that 3 of them had traces of banned substances in their systems. And then, Jim's got 15 tested on the 20th of May. Is that the cost? Is that the level of testing that the horses that are being tested in Ireland are being subjected to? And obviously, is the funding there for that, or is it a slightly cheaper test? I'm not sure of that, but it certainly stood out to me of how expensive that was to get done. And this guy, how many private trainers would subject horses when there's no real benefit to it? You bought the horse, then can the IHRB go and find that trainer now? Because obviously, it should be easy to trace back where they came from, what stables they came from, and start an inquiry there. And the other thing that stood out to me was, it said the 2 whistleblowers claimed that they gave pretty strong evidence or recommendations of where potential cheats could be found, and nothing was done about it. So if that's proven, that's an incredible situation. So I don't think there's no case closed here, but I think this is moving on significantly, and we know Paul's like a dog with a bone. He's not going to let go. And it's going to be really interesting Tuesday. Obviously, Jim can't go Tuesday, but I think this is coming to a head now. And, if they're going to clean up the sport, and it needs to be cleaned up, well, it seems to be going the right direction, and people are starting to take risks in terms of contacting Paul, and I seem to have contacted the IHRB in the past, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, first thing to do would be to try and establish these letters. So I know certainly they weren't kept. The second emailer hadn't kept her copy of the letter but could cite all the details, and the second letter writer hadn't kept his copy of the letter either. But if there's proof that the letter had been received for the IHRB, then the first question the committee should be asking is about those letters. How you prove they arrived at the IHRB, I don't know, and I'm not sure when they were sent. It seems like quite a long time ago. We've seen good, bad and indifferent efforts at these committees. We've seen some frankly laughable efforts when John Delaney was first in, and frankly the questions were about, you know, they weren't far off, how could we get tickets for games? And then we've seen better ones, admittedly with some grandstanding, when the writing was on the wall for the FAI. So let's see what the quality of the committee is as well, and have they their homework done on all this. But that would be, as you said, very interesting. That's page 2021 of the Sunday Independent. I want to check in with Michael Meehan. 57 minutes gone at Dr. Hyde Park. This is Roscommon against Galway. Michael, Galway nudging into control here. What, they're 4 points in the clear with 12, 13 minutes to go?
Yeah, that's it, Joe. We've had second half. It's 5 points to 2 to Galway since half time. And yeah, they've just got in control a little bit of ball around the middle, have put a squeeze on Roscommon's kickouts that have worked a little bit better. They forced a few turnovers, they forced the kick out over the sideline, all this, you know, in the earlier stages of the second half. And, you know, the rain has been spilling down. It's sort of eased a little bit, so it is very tricky out there. We still have lots of turnovers. But Paul Kelly has got another play for Galway. Matthew Tierney has a couple of super frees scored. Shea Mulch has a free for Roscommon. Donny Smith landed a super 45 in horrendous conditions. And Cathal Craig came on. He fisted a point, and he obviously picked up a knock because he was off 3 minutes later. So it's very much in Galway's hands and Galway's control now at this stage. With lots of turnovers all over the pitch still, but by and large, you'd have to say Galway have kind of got the grip of this game. If they keep their goal intact, you know, they'll have a really strong chance here. Yeah, okay, very good. Thanks for the time being. Michael Meehan there. So Galway lead by 4 with 13 minutes to go. Meanwhile, about 42 minutes on the clock in Leinster, this in the first of the day's football quarterfinals, and it's Westmeath who lead Laois by 2 points. So it's Laois 110, Westmeath 112 in Tullamore, about 7 minutes gone in the second half. We're taking a very short break, and then we'll wrap up the last few stories in the papers with Michael Verney and Bernard Jackman next.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Debt and financial struggles aren't something we usually like to talk about, but there's often a manageable solution. So this weekend on News Talk, we've teamed up with the ISI for some practical advice and tips. Did you know a debt settlement arrangement could help you with unsecured debts such as credit cards, loans and overdrafts? The arrangement allows you to pay off an agreed percentage over a period of time, with a balance then written off. Find out more at newstalk.com/tips.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Our intercity trains are now operating at 50% capacity, in line with public health guidelines. That means if you have a journey, you must pre-book your intercity ticket at irishrail.ie. Thank you for helping us all stay safe. From Éireann Road Éireann, part of the Transport for Ireland network.
Get connected on every journey this summer with Audi Servicing. Make your Audi a connected car with a complimentary Audi data plug worth €62 when you book an expert, major or sanitization service on audiservice.ie. Enjoy 12 months roadside assistance, a full vehicle health check and Audi genuine replacement parts as standard. Your journey continues with Audi Servicing. Book now on audiservice.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
Afternoons are easy with insuremyvan.ie, Ireland's low-cost van insurance specialist. Get your business back on the road with Insure My Van's best price guarantee. For super savings, visit insuremyvan.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremyvan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
With Virgin Mobile, there's nothing hidden. Now you can try unlimited data, calls and texts for only €5 a month for 5 months for everyone joining. It's an offer that's bigger than big. So, what are you waiting for? See virginmobile.ie. Virgin Mobile. Nothing hidden.
SIM-only contract. For T's and C's and acceptable usage policy, see virginmobile.ie. €25 a month after offer. Ends 28th of July 2021.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Point for Roscommon, so 3-point gap now with 10 minutes to go. Roscommon 10 points, Galway 110. Another shot on goal. Roscommon here, right hand side, and it's wide. So still a 3-point gap for Galway with 10 minutes to go. We're going through the Sunday Papers, last few stories with Bernard Jackman and Michael Verney of the Irish Independent. Just a brief mention of this story. We don't need to labour the point because thankfully it's not as troublesome as it was for about 18 months, frankly. The FAI and their finances. The headline here, this is page 11. This used to be, for a time, page 1 of the front section of the Sunday Times. It's now page 11 of the sports section. Money troubled FAI racing against time. So the FAI is trying to, well, there's a few things going on. The legacy of the John Delaney era is cumbersome, to say the least. That Sports Direct debt still hangs over them. So frankly, the FAI is still paying 100 grand a month to Sports Direct, and with all the interest, 5% interest, that adds an extra 275 grand a year on top of the 100 grand a month. So they're trying to pay that back early, was one of the findings from the accounts which were published this year. Salaries to paid senior executives have dropped last year. They made a saving of 700 grand. So it went from 859 grand to 146 grand. Jonathan Hill, the new CEO, he'll be getting 207,000 a year, which is obviously a drop of what John Delaney was getting. Delaney was getting 997,000 for 2018, so Hill will get 207 by comparison. Sport Ireland withheld half of its 3 million grant in 2019, but it has rewarded the FAI for its governance reform, so it's doubled their annual grant, and that will help pay the lower and middle earners in the 202 strong FAI organisation whose staff cannot be laid off under the terms of the government's financial rescue package. And then the FAI also took a $5 million interest-free loan from FIFA, which was repayable over 10 years. The bottom line is their overall debt has increased to €65 million, but the situation is more stable than in 2019. So the overall debt, €65 million, and the situation more stable than in 2019. I mean, it's just, Bernard, when you remind yourself of where we are with maybe what, generally is the most popular sport in the country and participation through the roof, and 65 million in debt and just still trying to disentangle itself from the mess that it got itself into. It's extraordinary. So 65 million in debt, but a bit more stable.
Yeah, they were an incredible mess, and I think the real thing I took from this article was that they've got Sport Ireland back on board. They've got the confidence of Sport Ireland, and they actually doubled their annual grant because of their governance reforms. So that's a key starting point. That's going to be massive for them in terms of extending credit, refinancing, and hopefully getting themselves back with on some kind of positive trajectory. But yeah, they were in a hell of a bad place, and in some ways COVID actually helped them. I know they were down in terms of their ticket revenue, etc., but the government actions to take on some of the staff, etc., helped them get through it. But yeah, the big thing was their governance was all over the place. That seems to be up to a better standard, and having the confidence of Sport Ireland, I think, could be a game changer in terms of building up from this.
It's funny, Joe, the FAI are actually indirectly helping Sports Direct sponsor GA clubs the length and breadth of the country now at this stage. They're involved with a club in nearly every county in Ireland, basically indirectly or directly, probably with FAI money.
Sports Direct are?
Yeah, Sports Direct are sponsoring loads of different clubs, GA clubs now, apart from sports, sponsoring the Cork GA senior hurlers and footballers. They're involved with loads of different clubs around the country now as well.
I hadn't realised that at all. I knew the Cork sponsorship. What's their logic there, beyond just sponsorship, I suppose?
I don't know. I'm not sure really. Like, I know they're involved with Road in County Offaly anyway. And I said about 2 months ago, I saw a list of clubs. There was at least 10 or 12, and they kind of keep adding to that as well. So yeah, it's interesting that soccer money maybe been pumped into GA, which I didn't think I'd ever see.
So, Michael, you picked out page 72 here at the Mail on Sunday. Philip Quinn with Liam Brady, July 1971. So it's the 50-year anniversary of Liam Brady going over to Arsenal. So Philip Quinn has sat down with Liam Brady for a chat. He says he doesn't walk across the lobby of the Conrad Hotel, he floats. If only he had a ball. Johnny Giles reckoned Brady turned from an ugly duckling into a beautiful swan when he was in possession. When the ball was at Brady's left foot, the Wizard of Whitehall morphed into Merlin, which is beautifully written and hard to say. There's a little poster as well, or picture as well, of the Arsenal crowd back in the day, and they're holding up a big sign which says, "God gave the world Jesus Christ, now he gives it Liam Brady," which gives you a sense of the love for Brady, PFA Player of the Year. And they talk about all sorts. They talk about his early years at Arsenal. They talk about his time over in Italy. There's a hell of a documentary in Brady, isn't there? Like, there needs to be a documentary. There was a great John Giles one a few years back. There needs to be one on Brady and his time in Italy and Arsenal in particular.
I remember getting caught down a rabbit hole one day, Joe, just watching clips from him playing in Italy. Just all, like, he was just absolutely adored over there as well, and some of the goals. Because obviously Liam Brady's well before my time, but just even to see that big banner that you read out there that was in the crowd, like, just how adored he seems to have been everywhere he went. And even I'd be only a casual soccer follower, but just love seeing him back on punditry as well. I think the mix of the old school and the new school is always needed, be it in GA, be it in rugby, be it in soccer, whatever it is, when you're analysing, because the game changes, but a lot of the basic principles stay the same. The likes of him, and I know you have Johnny Giles on every week, and I love listening to him as well. When you merge the old with the new, I think you get that happy medium. I think you get that really, really happy medium. I think it kind of clicks in for a rake of different audience as well. But this is a lovely piece. I think it's part 1 of 2. Yeah, next week is Liam Brady on Jack Charlton, Trapattoni in Ireland under Kenny, so that'll be interesting as well. But yeah, that's one piece now of all the kind of interviews this weekend. That's one piece I'd highly recommend to get stuck into. Yeah,
I totally agree with you on the old school thing as well. I love sitting in a Virgin studio and Matt Williams is there and a move happens and he says, yeah, that started in the 1980s, that move. And you get this history of the game, where that one started in Australia, that move, and it's important to keep that connection. One interesting thing here that Brady says about Italy, so Juventus get him for $500,000. He almost went to Bayern Munich, but Paul Breitner wanted to move from left back into midfield. And Brady says, I think Juve had 3 or 4 options above me in the pecking order: Platini, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and Kevin Keegan. I spoke to Keegan recently. He wanted to go to Juve, but his wife didn't want to go to Italy. Who knows what might have happened if he'd said yes. But he had 7 great years, and he says one of the things was that they said to him, you don't need to get back. We'll get the ball to you and you do your stuff. So in England, he was told he had to track back, whereas in Italy, they just said, don't worry about that tracking back. You stay up there. And so one of the many reasons he flourished. So that's on page 72 of the
just on the Italy team as well, Joe, I thought it was interesting. I love just seeing even different papers, and the Times always do it really well each week, where they just pull out various numbers of the week. And this week at the Euros, the number 34 they have pulled out. The average age of the 5 starting centre-backs in the match that Italy won against Belgium was 34 years and 234 days, with Giorgio Chiellini 36, the oldest. So there's always a chance for the older dog. It's amazing how we, even in the media, once someone gets to the age of 30, they're a stalwart or a veteran, and it's will he or will she go for one more year? But and Bernard, I'm sure, will echo this when you're over a team. Like, speed and youth is great, but you do need to marry that, like the punditry we're talking about, with that experience, with the guys that will take, the guys and girls that will take the game by the scruff of the neck. Usually the older players who are more experienced as well. So for me, and I'm nearly 34 years and 234 days old myself, so it's good to see that there's still guys thriving at the highest level.
Hang on to every day.
Oh, 100%, Joe. Yeah, because once they're gone, they're gone.
We've done well here to circumvent the papers without touching on the Euros so far, because like Euros coverage is everywhere. The England bandwagon, there's no room left. It's departed. They are up and running. They're excited. Bernard, do you find yourself when the games are on cheering for England, or are you dead against?
Yeah. No, I like them. I like Gareth Southgate as a manager. I've listened to quite a lot of his interviews, and I think it's fascinating. I mean, it's such a poison chalice as such to be manager of England, and the pressure and the toxicity that can come, both to the manager and the players, and being probably aware of that, dealing with that, staying positive, helping those players be able to perform with that pressure. I think it's fascinating, and I'm enjoying it, to be honest, and I'm enjoying seeing if they can continue to deal with that, and particularly if it comes to penalties. And I know Michael was interested in an article around that this weekend. I loved, I picked Wayne Rooney's piece on Pogba because Pogba fascinates me a little bit because I'm a United fan, and I don't watch as many soccer games as I used to, but he seems to polarize people's opinion. But I really enjoyed his piece because he's really talking around how tactically France are set up. Now, and obviously it's down to, the quality of like Benzema and Mbappe and Kante, etc., but how France set up to utilise his strengths, and how, he plays so much better for France than he does for United. And my question is, if you have a diamond like him, is it not worth obviously playing to his strengths tactically, or else recruiting players who can allow him play at his strengths as well? Because obviously, the guys with X Factor or girls with X Factor, they're rare, and to have a player who can help you win games, you nearly should be a slave to facilitating them. And also just his attitude. I mean, even he played with him with Mourinho. And again, the perception is that he's moody, maybe he's a little bit flaky, flary, but he speaks about his unbelievable commitment to the team, and all the other stuff, the haircuts and dancing. It's irrelevant in that he's an incredibly hard worker, who's a good team player. And just another little bit then about the media stuff and the Instagrams, and how at Derby he can control that. But with the bigger teams, and guys can maybe make millions to put stuff out on social media, so it's very difficult for a manager to control that. So again, he's just his article has become a must read for me, and I think this week's is good.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, he spells out how to get the best from Pogba tactically, and as you said then, like he's effusive in his praise of Pogba off the pitch, just saying first class, and Rooney doesn't have to say that. He chose to make a point of saying how good Pogba is off the pitch. As you said, the haircuts, the dancing, that's all irrelevant. Ignore that. So that's on page 8. Before we go, Michael, you're a big Wimbledon fan. Yeah, no, a big Wimbledon fan. I actually I went over to study journalism it was actually in Wimbledon, and I lived about 200 yards from Wimbledon Tennis Club, and it was before I moved over there, I was at the 2012 ladies gold medal match between Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova, and I went over a couple of years ago and queued for a day ticket for Wimbledon, and just went around, and it was absolutely fascinating. I love it, really, to be honest with you. It's actually kind of getting it's not getting as much exposure probably this week, just because there's so much going on, and particularly with the GA, and I know my head is stuck in the GA no more than anyone else's, but I thought there's a couple of nice pieces around Emma Raducanu, who's 18. She's awaiting her A-level results, and she's the youngest British woman into the 4th round of Wimbledon in the Open era, and it's her first time playing in Wimbledon. And I was looking at bits of it yesterday when I got a chance, and even looking at highlights on Twitter, and it's amazing to see. It always happens. It was Tim Henman in '96 against Yevgeny Kafelnikov in the first round, where he burst on the scene as an 18-year-old. Now she's bursting on the scene, and the symmetry with maybe her coming through the door, and a couple of days ago maybe Andy Murray going out the door, having somehow got back fit enough to play Wimbledon. Just really interesting story. She's ranked in the mid 300s. She beat
I think the player she beat yesterday was ranked in the 50s in the world. It's amazing. Wimbledon always seems to produce these British players kind of landing on the scene. I think it was the late Elena Baltasha, years ago as well. There's always English players or British players bursting on the scene. So that was probably one of the big stories yesterday. And I suppose to read about it properly, you probably have to get the Times or one of the English-based papers. But I just thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. And how good is Raducanu tipped to be? Are we talking top 10 player here and competing for majors, or too early to say?
Yeah, I haven't seen that much of her, no more than I'd say the greater public would have seen of Henman even before he burst on the scene in '96. But there's a couple of great lines even in, I think it was the Times piece, just about how she plays every point with such almost joy and vigour, and at that age she's reasonably powerful. So like if you're quite powerful at the age of 18, chances are the women's game is becoming a power game no more than the men's game is. And I'd say she's going to fly up the rankings anyway now as a result of this. This is her first Wimbledon. I think she'd only played one WTA event before this. So I'd say the world is her oyster now over the next couple of years. But I wouldn't have an intimate knowledge of whether she's going to be ranked in the top 10 or that. But she's definitely going to get a couple of days out every year in the middle of July in SW19 anyway.
You're more about the strawberries and walking around than in-depth tennis.
Pims and strawberries, Joe, yeah.
Fellas, we are out of time. Super stuff. Bernard Jackman, great to have you on. Bernard, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
Thanks, Michael.
Michael Verney of the Irish Independent. Thanks, Michael. Enjoy the hurling today.
No bother, Joe. Will do.
Cheers, fellas. That was the Sunday Paper Review, available to podcast. Often does really well on a Monday, so we'll keep throwing it up for you. We should go to Dr. Hyde Park because it's gone full time, and I'm seeing happy Galway faces, Michael Meehan. So, final score in the end?
Yeah, we're on 2-11 to 12 points.
Okay.
And it was good. The game, as I kind of sensed when I talked to you the last time, it just felt that Galway had taken charge a little bit. They seem to have a little bit more running in the legs as well. And to bring a bit of the Euros here, Matthew Tierney finished a nice goal and nearly overcomplicated. There was a goal chance that was kind of going on for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, and you're wondering how many have you missed it. But it broke to the ground, and he clipped it along the ground, and it snuck inside the post, and that was the nail in the coffin. That put it 2-11 to 0-10, and that was after 32 minutes of normal time. So there ended up being maybe 7-8 minutes played over here. And Roscommon, I'm sure they'll be very disappointed. They brought a lot of fight in the first half, and they brought a lot of aggression. Even the early stage of the second half, those four yellow cards dished out quite quickly. 3 Roscommon, 1 Galway. So there was an element of physicality there. The conditions probably lent to that a little bit too, but really from mid stages in the second half, you could sense that Galway just had a little bit more running in the legs, and were just a little bit, things were happening a little bit easier for them. And Matthew Tierney, kicked 1-2 in that second half. He did super display, some super frees off his left. Normally Shane Walsh would kick off left and right, but today he left the left footers to Matthew Tierney after the first 15 or 20 minutes, and I think he got 3 frees and that goal.
Yeah.
And he had a really good performance around the middle of the field.
Okay. We will chat more in due course. Thanks for the time being, Michael Meehan. So 5-point win for Galway. They're through to a Connacht final where we're presuming they'll play Mayo. 12 points for Roscommon. Galway 2-11.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna